So what I've got behind me is a half horsepower, super torquey little motor, drivetrain, including the axle, the wheels, and a couple carrier bearings. The whole wiring harness for everything, a built-in battery charger, motor controller, forward throttle potentiometer, forward reverse controls, a key with an on-off switch, and all the wiring to make what's left of my son's Power Wheel a little pulling truck that I think I could probably pull a car around the yard with. Let's take it on. I guess the first thing I should do is probably start taking it apart and finding out how I'm going to mount a frame to the bottom of the plastic truck. If you couldn't tell, we've made some modifications before. We basically put 2 car batteries on here to give it extra weight in the back and a longer battery life. In doing so, we broke the wheels. Today's a new day. Okay, so enter commentary mode. Basically what happened was the wheels fell off because we put too much weight on it. And then we changed wheels, and this is what you see here. Self-tappers and cotter pins, and it's just a mess. I'm not very proud of it, but it's a fact. In order to get the car batteries in the truck, I had to put them in the bed of the truck, which means I had to run the power wire to the back. In order to do that, you have to take the seat off, access all the wiring. Now, when I got this thing, it didn't have a control switch, so I had to make my own. And here you see it, 4 toggle switches and some rewiring. I made it easy for the kids. Worked well. This is all the wiring for the old motors, and apparently we're not going to need those anymore, so just rip them out. Yeah, there you go. Just rip them all out of there. I've run into my first dilemma. These are way too small. They're heavy, and I'm not going to be able to use them. They don't stick out far enough, and I don't have a mill or a lathe to make anything new, so I have kind of a idea. The bad news is, it's a horrible idea. The good news is, if I mess it up, it's not that big of a deal. I got some little tiny 4-wheeler tires and wheels. I'm thinking I could probably strip the rubber off of this, and that might mount perfectly inside that rim. It's pretty close. So I'm gonna try and hack away at that for a minute and see what happens. I literally meant hacking away at it. It seemed like an eternity. It was just an awful experience. Broke out the razor blades for a minute, and that's what actually wound up being the winner here. A little bit of pulling and prying and razor blades. And I finally got the whole thing off there. Super pain in the butt. I still had to trim back a little bit of the rubber where it was tied up against the aluminum wheel so that it would fit down in the new steel wheel that came from the 4-wheeler tire. It has a nice snug fit. If you notice the 3 raised lines on the aluminum wheel, they're perfectly symmetrical, and they fit perfectly where the 3-bolt pattern is on the 4-wheeler wheel. So that's going to make it easy for me to line them up. Once I get the measurements where I need them, where I like them, just grab the center punch and set my holes. And then I can run a few pilot holes with the new drill. Increase the size of those holes a little bit bigger. Just keep stepping up until I'm happy. And then I realized that I drilled my holes too big because I was paying more attention to the all thread and not the hole pattern for the wheel. It was time to measure out some all thread. More hacksaw. A little bit of filing. More filing. Here's my nuts, washers, and all thread, and one more than I needed. Okay, pretty self-explanatory here. Nut, washer, times 3. And flip over and cook for another 5 minutes. We're going to go ahead and add another washer set. Now, I will go ahead and give you some information here. If you decide to do this, make sure you're putting on lock washers or using some Loctite, because during the test run, guess what I lost? Here's the final wheel project. Now I just have to make one more. And this is me babbling about how this rear end is actually pretty cool. It's a limited slip, which has a differential in it. It allows one wheel to spin faster than the other. If you hold the center axle and you turn one wheel clockwise, the other one should turn counterclockwise. And that's just the way that it's built on the inside. It allows for one wheel to spin faster around a curve. Makes for a pretty ingenious setup. Very helpful, and if you have a rear-wheel drive vehicle, and it's not all-wheel drive, you most likely have a setup similar to this one. Time to try out the wheel on the new axle, and for some reason I decided to go full caveman here and just hammer it on with my forearm. This is a snap ring. It goes on the end of the axle and it keeps the wheel and tire from coming off. And as the second wheel goes on, I decide to curb the caveman attitude. Now you guys might not appreciate it as much as I do, but take a look at this axle. A little bit of hillbilly ingenuity went into this, and I'm pretty damn proud of it. Time for a dry test fit. As I forget the GoPro and the light. Definitely looks like it's going to need some bigger tires, but if we eliminate this when we put the frame in, I think these will tuck up in there nice and they won't look very bad at all. Plus we can always change these out. I think I'm done for today.